covered.
I'm super excited. This is great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell them.
Yeah, go tell them. Go for it.
I'm gonna tell them. For the next 5 years, they are going to feed all of us every day.
Shout out to the Rockefeller Foundation for helping us out with such a worthy cause.
You guys don't have to chant my name. Thank you. You don't have to.
We actually spent over $500,000 on this compound right here, not including any other schools, just here, and we're not done. That figure is going to cross over $1 million by the end of this year, just into developing this school and the community around it to, better the lives of the kids and the teachers. The structures we built will impact generations to come. And it's kind of funny because we built so much here that they actually named me the Chief of Development.
Jimmy, when you say you do it,
You didn't have to go this above and beyond, but thank you.
All right. Welcome to This Week in Ghana. Mr. Beast has now been named a development chief. And also many other stories from Popcaan also being named development chief, and many other stories from the country of Ghana. This is your bi-weekly live stream where we talk about all things Ghana related. Before we get into today's stories, we'll start with some introductions. So I'll turn it over to our co-host for today before I introduce myself. I think you muted yourself.
I was on mute and then I unmuted, and I guess I muted by mistake. My apologies.
No worries.
My name is Ivy Prosper, and I am a producer and a YouTube creator, founder of my company, Prosper Creative Group. And I am looking forward to us diving into this conversation today. If you want to reach out to me, you can email me at info@ivyprosper.com. I do some consulting as well as documentary production, as well as speaking, MC, moderating panel events, panel discussions, and much, much more. You can follow me at Ivy Prosper on all social media platforms.
All right, and I'm Joe Hitago, founder of Authentic African Media. We focus on helping people do one of three things, or two or three of the three things: visiting, moving, and investing on the continent of Africa. We also work to try to bridge the gap between those living on the continent and those living in the diaspora through news stories and through live streams such as this. So bi-weekly, we have these live streams where we talk about things happening in Ghana. And then we have other live streams we do on news around the continent, some news sometimes specific to Sierra Leone, just because I have dual citizenship there. And then we have other conversations with entrepreneurs and those who live in the diaspora, building and moving to the continent of Africa. So with that, we'll get into today's stories. So as you saw in that video, just this past week, American YouTuber and philanthropist Mr. Beast, also, well, his name is Mr. Beast online, but his real name is Jenny Donaldson, was reportedly installed with an honorary title of Chief of Development because of his significant investments in local infrastructure. His team undertook some extensive projects to revitalize an undisclosed community in Ghana. So he had demolished what he called he had some choice words for it, an older building, and rebuilt it from scratch with full furnishings. He also constructed a new classroom to accommodate roughly 250 students. He built and furnished two apartment bungalows for teachers to eliminate their long, costly commutes, drilled new borehole for clean water, added a washroom facility, and also built fully stocked kitchen. He also announced that this was in partnership with the Rockefeller Foundation, that he was going to be providing free school lunches until May of 2030. So he did disclose that he spent approximately $500,000 thus far, and another $500,000 at least will be spent by the end of this year. This is part of a larger mission where he has funded the construction or renovation of 10 schools globally, including locations in the US, Mexico, India, and Ecuador. And this is part of what he calls the 1 Billion Acts of Kindness campaign, which is part of his philanthropic efforts. So I do want to play a little bit more from that video where he does speak a little bit more about what he was doing and why he's there and what was going on. And then we'll have some more commentary on the other side.
We don't need to film this. For over a decade now, this river is where the entire village gets their water from. And nearly 80% of their population, including kids, have parasitic worms in their intestines, which literally breaks my heart. That's why we drilled them a brand new well, not only for the school, but for the hundreds of people in the surrounding community.
You know what that is? That's fresh water. The schools now have clean water to drink.
We also built bathrooms so they no longer have to pee and poop in the woods. And we built sinks over here that gets water from their brand new well.
And we even built a kitchen. We are going all out for this school.
Come on in. This kitchen has everything they'll need to provide school lunches every day. I wanted to tell you guys, every single school day for the next 5 years, we're going to give all the students a free lunch.
Wow. I'm short of words. I don't even know what to say.
Pick a date anywhere on this calendar.
2030?
May of 2030, we will give them free meals.
Gonna do that? Just like that?
Just like that. It's covered.
I'm super excited.
All right. So there's been lots of reactions and responses to this particular story. You know, Ivy and I quickly caught up on this. We see some interesting responses. The people are juxtaposing ISO Speed's trip with Mr. Beast's trip. But Ivy, love to hear your thoughts on this particular story, what Mr. Beast is doing and the amount of money he spent, etc. Just on all that Mr. Beast did there in Ghana and being installed as development chief.
Well, I think that it is a really good idea to help people in the community because there are communities that are desperately in need. And it's always good to see when people genuinely want to invest in communities. In this particular case, as you had said, he has this 1 billion acts of kindness that he's been doing, and he's been doing it in other countries, including his own country, the United States. So he's not specifically choosing to only do it in African countries, because sometimes people talk about people use the term the white savior complex, that people don't always like to see that it's always a white person that comes and is helping the community and feels like it looks bad. But I think that he genuinely wants to help communities around the world. I do think that there are ways in supporting communities and having sensitivities in how you're doing the things that you're doing, which he, as a young white man, doesn't always have the cultural sensitivity on how to say certain things. You know, like we know that Ghana's not perfect. A lot of countries have these challenges, developing nations. So I'm not saying that we should hide that there's these problematic issues where there's children who need to be in quality school facilities and all that kind of stuff. What I mean is there's choice of ways of phrasing things that can help, that can give people dignity or not give them dignity. And I think when he said they've built new bathrooms, new washrooms, he didn't need to say the line he said, so they don't have to pee and poop in the woods. I don't think that line was needed. That's my opinion. He could have just said, we've built them new toilets, new washrooms that they can use in the school. He didn't need to say, so they don't have to pee and poop in the woods. I feel like that gave a visual that kind of takes away their dignity a little bit. That's my opinion. And I think that Ghana has been doing a lot of giving the development chief title to people. And I think that some of the conversation that's been happening is that it dilutes the whole idea of what chieftaincy means. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm going to speak specifically in the case of development chief. People are given the development chief title with the intention that they are going to be doing some kind of development in the community. And a lot of the times people are given these titles and then they don't even do anything in the community. They get the title and then they leave. And then they tell everybody I'm a queen mother or I'm a chief in Ghana. And then it's like they haven't even been back since they were given the title. So I think that there needs to be more intentionality when these titles are given. I think it's great when someone comes and does something for a community, but I don't think that it means immediately give them a title. You know, watch how they are over the next few years, because there are some people I know who were given development chief titles who the community actually watched what they were doing over the years before they gave this title. But when you're just throwing it at people because they've done something, you know, for the first time, they've done it in that community, I think you don't know what the long term is going to be. If this person is going to actually come back, are they only doing this one time? Is it just for optics? You know, I'm not saying that he doesn't have genuine intentions. I'm just saying that with the title, I feel like communities need to hold that more and be more intentional about who they give the titles to, instead of just throwing them out. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you 100%. I think there's a conversation, as you mentioned, about it even diluting those who have it by family lineage, right? The idea if there's so many people that are named chief who haven't done much before they got the name and then aren't doing much after, then those who go through the process of being named chief based on the family lineage, I've heard two folks who actually were installed as chiefs based on their family lineage felt like it diluted what they had done, right? Because at the time that they were, you know, planning to announce that, you know, they have family lineage and they've become chief, they also found that there were other folks having those same announcements, people who don't have the same kind of ties to Ghana. So really good point. And then to your point about how he communicates the issues, there was this other video that I meant to play earlier, and I think it might help give some context to what you just described. And I think it'll be good to kind of get an idea of how he describes things from time to time, which really, you know, gives some credence to what you just said. I'm just trying to figure out how to remove the other one from stage. Sorry.
Take your time.
You know, the internet sometimes is there's some okay, there we go. That's been removed. Okay. So now let's add this to the stage and let's listen to how he described, because that video we saw, that clip, wasn't everything he said. There are some other things that he said throughout the process. Now forgive the graininess of this video. It's a video of a video. So watch what he says.
Which brings us to our first school in Ghana.
We built this one?
No, that's the old school. You think I would build that?
No.
You know what that means, Chandler? Let's tear down this rust bucket of a school.
Let's tear down this rust bucket of a school, right? So to your point,
that was, yeah.
No, do you have more? I mean,
no, I'm saying, yeah.
And so I
Just
think
say
it was
rust
really important.
bucket of a school.
Yeah, I think it was really important to call that out. You were right about that. The language he used to describe it does strip people of their dignity, right? The way he's describing it. Now, listen, I understand if you are from that community and you feel that way and you are communicating that to other people to help get work done. But for him to say it, there's so many different things. The optics, even though he plans to do something well, it does feel condescending, right? And he may not mean it. As you said, he's, right around 30 years old. He's still just trying to understand, who he is as a person. He's, come to an incredible amount of wealth based on what he does. And he's trying to find a way to do this billion acts of kindness thing. But that and some of the other things that he said throughout, and he says from time to time when he comes and does some of the work he does, really does sometimes take away from the good work he's trying to do, because it does feel condescending. One other thing that I've heard people talk about is the idea that, I Show Speed is done showing the world Africa's rich culture and positive side. They will send Mr. Beast to the remotest villages to dig wells and push the narrative, Africa has no clean water. Now, my thought on this is that two things can be true, right? There was this viral post maybe about a month and a half ago that somebody sent me where this person said, why is everybody rushing to show Africa through a Europeanized lens or Western lens, right? Africa is everything and different things to everybody, but it's not just one thing. And I think that, part of that is because for so long, it's only been through philanthropic effort and aid is that Africa has been seen. So sometimes you have to kind of counterbalance that history with something positive. So I do understand that the reason why people are upset, that they feel like people like a Mr. Beast, and there's like these skits of documentarists or people who do documentaries that come to Africa and they talk about how people are living in the bush and all these kinds of things. And what it does is it leads to the average person watching, who doesn't really have much of an education on the continent of Africa, being surprised and shocked at what they saw when IShowSpeed came to Africa. And this year, 2026, ended 2025, you saw the tears and the commentary from these people who had never seen Africa in any way but the way Mr. Beast is describing it in this video. And so in some cases, it can do more harm than good when you see Africa in this light. Any additional thoughts on this particular topic?
No, that's it. Said it all.
Yeah. So, and I will say, you know, look, it'd be nice for Mr. Beast to do something else while in country, which is one of the things people are complaining about. However, that is what he does, right? His focus is on this billion acts of kindness, focusing on just what he's doing, not like going to restaurants or showing hotels or showing real estate or any of that kind of. That's not what he does, right? So
yeah, that's not what he does. Yeah, he didn't come to Ghana for that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is one criticism, but just to be clear, that's not what he came for. But there are ways that he could have done better, and I hope that he does as he grows and learns. Now, he's not the only person, and in fact, he was the main person we were going to be talking about today. Sorry, there was someone else that was going to be the main person we were going to be talking about today until Mr. Beast was installed. But also, Jamaican dance hall artist. I think he also spent some time in Canada too, if I'm not mistaken. Popcaan was officially installed as a traditional sub-chief in the Asebu traditional area of Ghana's central region on the 17th of February, so about 6 days ago. He was conferred with the title Development Chief and given a stool name Nana, Arko Kesi the first. So I do want to show a little bit of video from that installment ceremony, and then we'll give some commentary on the other side. Sorry. There's some audio.
Unruly. So it's all said and done. We have our and then we have some in there. We are here when you want some. No more when you some. They want to put the first. Now put the first. There you are.
All right, so you know, the Asebu region is one of those regions that I think has been a point of contention throughout the years with the discussion of giving out land to diasporans. I know you've spoken about that program some years back. I've spoken about it from time to time. We've known people who've developed there. I've gone up there and interviewed someone who's recently built their own house, and they've been helping other people build there. One of the things I did not mention on the previous video is when you are installed as a chief under the traditional process, it is a much more rigorous process, right? I spoke to someone who was installed as a chief while I was in Ghana in December, and he was locked in a room for a certain number of days. He had to walk all the way to the river. I mean, or to the ocean. There was so many things he had to go through to show that he cares enough about where he's going to be chief. He really needed to be grounded. There was so much that went into that process. And what you see here is a much more abridged version of the process, right? A very accelerated version of the process. So I didn't want to call that out. Any thoughts though? I mean, we've kind of already talked about this around Mr. Beast, but any additional thoughts on the difference between the two? And Popcaan getting it as well.
Well, I know that Popcaan has been coming to Ghana a number of times. He loves the country. It's my understanding that he's actually bought property in the country as well and plans to develop. He wants to do business. So he genuinely actually loves Ghana, and he's been coming multiple times over the last few years. So I don't know if he has a relationship with the community in Asebu. I haven't heard anything about that. But Asebu has so many different sub-chiefs. I interviewed the main chief, the paramount chief of Asebu. I interviewed him on my channel a few months ago. But there are sub-chiefs in the smaller communities of Asebu. So as you said, he's been made a sub-chief in one of the communities. So I just hope that it means he's actually going to be developing in that community. He's going to be developing something there and drawing attention. Because one of the things that I have noticed in Ghana is when they give these people these development chief titles, a lot of times some of them are hoping that that person can attract attention to their community, which will boost business and boost tourism, and also investing in the community. That is their hope, that this person can be somebody that can help them with doing all of that, advancing their community, you know, and encouraging others to come and visit that community. Because if he's coming to Ghana all the time and he's a sub-chief in this community, they're going to hope that he's going to bring his people every time he comes, bring more people to see what their community is all about.
Right, which actually makes sense, right? I mean, so it's interesting in Ghana, you have a paramount chief, Sierra Leone, similar paramount chief, and then we have section chief and town chief. So, you know, in other countries, I have seen that they do a similar process. Now it is specific, it is titled in a specific way. And we see this in some of the comments. People are saying this is about, you know, income and ensuring that some kind of form of there's a financial exchange. And yes, I mean, obviously it's about development, right? Developing that region in a number of different ways. As you said, through bringing more eyes to the community, also potentially through other investments. So we do hope, and we'll be watching to ensure we do see that happen with not just these two, but others, right? Because there are a lot of development chiefs that we've seen installed. I think I saw about 3 different ceremonies in December that people were promoting in different places. So you know, I will say each 2 of the 3 of them I knew personally or got to meet over the December holiday, and it does seem like they were doing something locally, whether that's developing land and hiring people, and also like one had a nonprofit. So just in case they're watching, I do recognize that they have done work. I don't know about the 3rd and some of the others in the past, but just to those 2 in particular, I will say it does seem like they've done there's some historical context as to why they're receiving the installment chief, the development chief title. All right, so moving on from development chiefs to traders, and that is TRADERS, people who sell and buy tomatoes, who are from Ghana, who happen to be caught, unfortunately, in a terrorist attack while doing trade in Burkina Faso. You know, there are some differences in numbers and stories. So, you know, this number that is explained here, we've heard different numbers, different people reporting on the same thing, but we do know that there were some people who experienced loss of life and other people who experienced major injuries. So we'll play this video and we will have some commentary on the other side.
Burkina Faso, and the Minister for the Interior, Mohamed Muntaka Mubarak, has announced that the bodies of 7 Ghanaian traders killed in a terrorist attack in Titao, northern Burkina Faso, have been laid to rest. He says government has intensified efforts to evacuate the surviving victims. The victims were part of a group of 18 Ghanaian tomato traders and truck drivers who were caught in the deadly attack last Saturday. The incident also left several others injured. According to the Minister for the Interior, 3 men sustained injuries, while 1 woman remains in critical condition. He spoke to Channel 1 News, and he said that the bodies of the deceased were burnt beyond recognition and had begun decomposing, forcing authorities there to proceed with the burial arrangements.
All right, and then just really quickly, there's a quick video of President Mahama visiting 37 Military Hospital, where he met with some of those who were injured, just to give you an idea of what those injuries look like. We'll share that here really quickly. But basically, he's talking to a nurse or a doctor there who's explaining the injuries from what we were able to gather. And you know, this is how a president should respond to a tragedy like this. I'm not speaking to any other presidents. I'm just speaking about this one, saying this is how you should respond. And I'll just leave it at that. But you can see that there were some major injuries here. Obviously, a broken arm, because you see what is the arm to kind of bring those bones together. So he's gone through surgery. You see another gentleman here, similar situation. And I will say that the reason why Ibrahim Traore, one of the reasons why Ibrahim Traore is actually why there was more of a revolution instead of what people would consider a coup, and so many people were happy to see him there, was because these kinds of things had been happening in Burkina Faso for years. And with all of the French military, US military, other Westerners in country, there wasn't much of a stop put to these kinds of things. According to Ibrahim Traore and his government, they've been quelling some of these, pushing them back, taking back territory, etc. But it is unfortunate that this still is happening and can happen. But to be clear, from what it sounds like here, immediately Burkina Faso alerted Ghana and let them know that this happened. And they communicated all that happened and all the information, and were upfront about it. And so I think that's really important as well, so that, you know, it's clear that this happened, and they knew that it happened in their country. And so they did the right thing of communicating it with Ghana. Any thoughts on this story, Ivy, before I give mine?
I just think that it's hard to know all the facts, because, as you said, some of the information is a little bit conflicting in the numbers of the people who were affected. But it happened, obviously, because these people are in the hospital. The president had visited them. I think that it is one of those things that will make people cautious about traveling into West African countries, especially at the Burkina Faso-Ghana border. At the same time, there's a lot of positivity about what the president is doing there, Ibrahim Traore. At the same time, you have these cells of people who are doing bad things. And I mean, they're not only in Burkina Faso, they're in other countries as well, and causing some of these issues. I would love to know more details about, what happened when the confrontation happened and everything, because it can also help us to inform on how we handle ourselves if we travel into areas where there are some of those terror situations happening. Because overall, a lot of West Africa is generally safe. It's just you do have these things that you have to be cautious of and be aware of the potential of it happening, because there are cells of people who are doing these things. So I think it's an unfortunate thing. And what it makes me think about is trying to focus more on our business within the country as well. I'm not sure, I don't know all the details. Were the tomato farmers, were they going there to get tomatoes to bring to Ghana, or were they taking tomatoes from Ghana there? Because my understanding is a lot of the tomato farming in Ghana is really almost non-existent. A lot of the tomato farms and tomato factories that were here during Kwame Nkrumah era, have collapsed over the decades. And so I know that Ghana imports a lot of tomatoes. So what I'm wondering is, did these people go there to go and get tomatoes that they were bringing into Ghana?
Yeah, all great questions. And the next story we will talk about kind of speaks to some of the changes that President Mahama in Ghana wants to make. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I think, the Burkina Faso is a pretty big country. And so, many people have gone. I think it was like 700 people 2 months ago, and there's a bunch going back in March, right? These are diasporans who are going for the residency program and, with the hope for a pathway to citizenship. And obviously their trip went off without any issues. There was no need for them to be scared, etc. Right? Just like in the United States, you have kind of a mass unaliving every single week in the US, but most people move around the US not even thinking about it, because many times it happens in isolated areas in the country. So, I do want to make sure we mention that. I think when it comes to Africa, right, a lot of times African countries get put on this red zone list, yellow zone, orange zone, you should not visit, because there is 1 or 2 attacks or something to that nature happening. But United States is never put on that zone. They're never in an orange zone, red zone, etc. But I mean, just Google the number of unalivings, mass unalivings that have happened so far this year. You will be shocked by the number. We're so numb to it living in the United States, or when you come to the United States, you may not know, but there is a lot, and in many different states too. It's not just in one isolated area. So I do want to call that out just as a frame of reference, right? So when we're thinking about Burkina Faso and we're thinking about the fact that this did happen in a remote region, and it's not something that regularly happens in, like, for instance, the capital city, right? That's not something that actually ever happens. And from what I understand, it also happened while Ibrahim Traore was out of the country, which it seems to me like that's why they did this attack. But I don't know for sure. I'm just speculating. But he was out of the country when this attack happened. So, we'll follow the story and keep you guys posted on, as more details come out. But, it is just one of those things that it's unfortunate that it did happen. And we hope that these kinds of things don't happen in the future. Now, to your point about, domestic production, and not just production of raw materials and raw goods, but also refining of it and then selling it externally and consuming refined versions of it. President Mahama announced plans to massively increase local processing of tree crops in Ghana. The goal is to stop exporting raw cashew, shea, and rubber, and so instead add value locally. So officials say that the move will create jobs, boost industry, and keep more profit inside the country from raw materials to finished projects or products, a major step towards industrial transformation. And I always give that anecdotal insight when I go to now it's called Accra Airport, right? When I go to the Accra Airport, it always surprises me to walk into a shop and you see something that says Swiss chocolate, and it's whatever, $4 for the Swiss chocolate. Switzerland does not make chocolate. They do not dig chocolate out of their ground. They do not grow cacao. It is coming from Africa, many times from Ghana, and it is refined in Switzerland and sold back to people on the continent for much higher prices. So that is the goal of this moving forward. I will play this video. I guess I didn't even play the video yet. So there's some thoughts there. I'll play the video and then give some, and then I'll turn it over to Ivy for some commentary on the other side.
We will no longer export raw cashew, raw shea, or unprocessed rubber, while importing the same finished products at higher prices. And so our target is clear: 50 to 60% local processing annually, expansion of agro-industrial parks, incentives for private sector processors, and stronger regulatory oversight through the Tree Crops Development Authority. Under the National Policy on Integrated Oil Palm Development, we call it the Red Gold, government is committed to invest $500 million to develop 100,000 hectares of oil palm and create 250,000 direct jobs. If we achieve this target, it will eliminate the 40% oil palm imports that we import from other areas and make Ghana a net exporter of oil palm. And so this is consistent with our pledge to scale up high-impact agricultural value chains with strong private sector participation.
All right, Ivy, your thoughts on this plan and this announcement?
I think that it's important for us to start really focusing on doing what he's talking about, because it's been decades of Africa sending out raw goods that other people process and refine and then send back to us. So I think that this initiative is a really good idea. I just hope that there's a planned execution, and that it's sustainable, because sometimes we make announcements, we have great excitement and hope, and then there's no execution of the announcement. Then next thing you know, years pass and then it gets forgotten. So I hope that there is an execution in place, because I think it's a great idea. Just need to have it to be executed and to have people on board too, because you could be the leader about an initiative and you have all these great ideas, but if the people around you are not also, on board with it, then it's hard to kind of get it going. So I hope that the people who are surrounding him are also on board and also are going to be strategic in putting this into action.
Absolutely. And to that point, he will be out of office before the expected timeline for this to happen, right? So the expectation is 5 years, he mentioned. I think he'll be out of office in 3. And so that would mean that the next administration, if it's another party or even of his own party, would need to want to continue to do this. And I think that's one of the challenges we see with long-term visions on the continent. And this is why you hear people talk about benevolent dictators, and they think maybe Africa needs a strong leader for an extended period of time, because every time a new person comes in, things change. I don't know if I agree with that, but that's what I hear. I mean, I think there are probably ways that people can continue things that are good for the country, regardless if another party or another individual started it. But that is a whole nother discussion. But, you hear that a lot. And that's why someone like Kagame, for example, has been applauded for what he's done in Rwanda, because he's been in power since I was in high school. And you may not know it, but I was in high school 22 years ago. So, he's been in power for a significant amount of time. And so, obviously, since longer than that, right? More than 22 years he's been in power. So, but obviously he's been able to realize a vision that people applaud very often when they talk about countries on the continent. So I hope, as you said, that whoever is around him will implement. Those who take over will continue the implementation of programs. So all great points. All right, so now moving on to Mahama speaking to the AU and explaining to them that they must recognize that slave trade as a crime against humanity, and the AU actually accepting that. But we'll play a little bit from his talk in front of the AU, and then we will have some more commentary on the other side. And the AU is African Union, for those who may not know.
Reparations for the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and apartheid were designated as a flagship priority of our union. In line with that decision, I was entrusted with the mandate to serve as African Union champion for reparations. This is not merely a title, it's a solemn obligation to pursue truth, recognition, and justice for our ancestors and for generations yet unborn. At the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025, I announced that Ghana would lead the effort to table a resolution declaring slavery and the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. That commitment marked the beginning of a structured diplomatic and legal process. I directed the Minister of Foreign Affairs to establish a high-level committee to coordinate consultations, refine the legal framework, and prepare a draft text consistent with international law and diplomatic practice.
All right. Your thoughts, Ivy, on this declaration as the most, the gravest of crimes against humanity. Yeah, your thoughts.
I think it's a good idea, because I think that it's the only way to get people to really recognize the true ramifications of the transatlantic slave trade. A lot of people, a lot of non-Black people don't really understand. And I feel like if this is, the AU has accepted this as, we're honoring this as it is. We're recognizing it as the biggest crime against humanity. Now the next step is for them to get the world to also recognize this, because I think they want to go to the UN to get this officially recognized as well. So right now it's the African Union recognizing it, and that's the first step. But I think it's very important because the things that happened during that period are what shaped a lot of ways that institutional racism, the way that Black people are treated around the world. You see that they're looked at as they're treated as subhuman in many instances. You see it sometimes with law enforcement and excuse me, different situations. And then systematically, the way that the system, especially when you look at the US, for example, when you look at Jim Crow laws, you look at redlining, different things that happen, and it was all because they looked at Black people as being beneath them, as being subhuman. And when you recognize that a lot of this stems from things that happened during the slave trade, then that's the first step of making sure that people recognize it. So I think that it's a good idea that he has brought this up, and that the African Union is in agreement with it. I think it's a really great idea.
Absolutely, yeah, and he did say he's working on the legal frameworks, which to me sounds like that's the next stage to be able to take it to the United Nations in order for it to be recognized as such. And to your point, yeah, I mean, there have been other mass unalivings in history that have been recognized as such. There are conventions, there are rules of law and war built around them. The idea of genocide and its the description of genocide comes from these kinds of resolutions, right, that have happened previously, specifically of what happened in Germany, that kind of what led to World War II. And so, yeah, I think it's important to go through the proper channels if necessary to ensure that it gets that designation. And then the hard part of actually pushing to get the actual reparations is like step one will have been done, because there is a lot more that has to be done. There's a lot of questions around who, how much, where, when, all those things are still to be determined. And obviously there's a movement here in the United States, and I think that there's some movements across the African Union as well. And so, and I've heard it mentioned also in the Caribbean as well. Ideally, these three groups work together to push through these resolutions, as did those coming out of Germany in the 1940s and 50s, and those kinds of conversations, with what happened there, because I think that was about 12 million, or sorry, less than 12 million. I think it was 6 million. I think what they say about 6 million people is what happened there. And then when you think about the transatlantic slave trade, or even what happened with King Leopold himself was 12 million, right? You talk about the transatlantic slave trade, the numbers are something around 40 to plus million people taken into captivity. They say the numbers are kind of vary from, historian to historian, but something like 20 something to 30 something million were unalived through the process, right? So, if you just take those numbers into account, we're talking over 40 million on just the two instances I just discussed. And so if you look at 40 million here and you look at 6 million elsewhere, there probably should be a designation for this group, right? So just looking purely at the numbers and processes that have to be gone through, I think it just makes sense. Okay, with that, there was one last policy that Muhammad signed into place. He's been a very busy man over the last couple of weeks. I know that he had made a lot of announcements in his early days as president. And I think that's probably one of the things you'll notice as someone who has been president before, out of office, then comes back. They know how to execute on certain things. And so for good or for bad, depending on the country we're talking about. But in this case, in Ghana, Muhammad was out for 8 years, came back, and immediately had policies that he had mentioned immediately after starting. And now what you're seeing is that these policies are going into effect, or being signed into these bills are being signed into law, right? So there's a 24-hour economy authority bill that is being signed into law. So I will we'll play this video from President Mahama to explain what that means, and we will have some commentary on the other side.
There's no sound.
Oh, you guys can't hear it. Sorry, guys. You're not hearing it as well, Ivy? Okay,
No, I don't hear it. I don't hear anything.
Let me remove it and add it back. This happens sometimes. It's very strange, but it happens. Let me see. Okay, let's try this again. If not, then we'll just speak to it. Let me just see if it works. Let me just. Sorry for those who didn't hear. Is the sound working now? No? Okay.
No.
So what he said is he just made a signature for the 24-hour authority bill. So we'll just then speak to it and then give some thoughts. So Ivy, do you want to give everyone maybe a little bit about what this bill represented and what it was? Because he mentioned that it's people been. So what he says in this video, maybe I should do that really quickly. What he says in this video is it's been a long time coming, had to go through the proper steps. There's something that people have really wanted in Ghana for a very long time. And he's happy that it's finally come across his desk so he can sign it. That's basically what what I was listening to at that point before we paused the video. But do you want to give some background to what the bill entails and how you feel about the bill?
Well, what I know is that President Mahama ran his campaign for his presidency on the 24-hour economy was a slogan of his throughout his presidential campaign. And so it was all about getting Ghana to shift to having a 24-hour economy where things can be working 24 hours a day in order to help to improve the country's efficiency in production, in getting people jobs, because if you're working around the clock. So in countries like the US and in Canada, you have companies that work 24 hours a day. You have shift work, you have day shift, night shift, afternoon shift. So there's always somebody who's working. There's always, the business is always moving. The engine is always going. But in Ghana, by the time it's 6 o'clock, you see a lot of people packing up. They're done work. There's not another shift taken over. And pretty much a lot of things will stop when the sun is setting. And the things that will continue are things like restaurants, you know, bars, nightclubs, that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that keeps going on and on and on. I feel like Accra Mall is one of the places. Accra Mall, Junction Mall, West Hills are the places where you can guarantee the stores will be open till 8 p.m., sometimes 9 if it's a weekend, if it's a Friday. And then in Osu, you know, there's things that are open late, but if you have to get something in an emergency, shopping, that kind of stuff, things close pretty early in Ghana. So with the 24-hour economy bill, he's finally implementing into law a framework, a structure where people can start doing this with their companies. So I think it's a good idea that's finally happening. I didn't realize that he needed to sign a bill, to be quite honest. I thought that when he was running his campaign on this 24-hour economy, that once he was in, that they should, you know, immediately start implementing things. But I guess it makes sense on a governmental level to have a bill that you sign into law so that you can somehow enforce people being able to lay down the groundwork for what they need to do to get it done. So for instance, right now with the roads, I feel like the roads that they're fixing could be done so much faster if they have large groups of people employed working 24 hours a day. You've got someone working you can get from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Then someone comes in 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. and then 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then you always have people around the clock so it gets done faster. So hopefully him signing this bill, that things are going to actually start moving forward now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's because, you know, with executive order, the next executive can always write it out of law, right? So I think if you go through the parliamentary process and you have a bill that goes through the process and he signs it, it's now in law no matter who's in office. So I presume that's why he went through that process. But to your point too, you know, I've worked at a company where we used to go to factories and the number of staff that would deplete after 6 p.m. I've been very late to meetings from time to time, Ghana man time. And when I got to a meeting in Tema at some of these factories, some of these brands that are very big brands in Ghana, pick one, you guys are familiar with them. I would notice that, you know, it's like empty. There are still some people working. It's not as if it's empty, but like it wasn't like what you would expect to see at other countries where their factories are running, you know, 24 hours a day around the clock. Obviously, there's going to be maybe a few less staff at night. But if you think about how much more productivity you can get out of businesses, how many more people you can put to work, right? It's huge. I mean, warehouses in particular, there's a lot of stuff stored in warehouses. A lot of the critters who get into foods, etc., are nocturnal creatures. If you have people working 24 hours a day, you do not have issues at warehouses where things get eaten into. And I can only tell you that from personal experience because we had items in stock at a warehouse, and we did see that rodents had gotten to it. And that's because those warehouses were pretty much empty, right? And it was just, they were free to roam, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we'd had to throw out large quantities of food, you know, that was supposed to be delivered to people because we had that issue. And that was because people were only working to a certain time. And maybe you had one security person just making sure somebody didn't come in and steal anything, but there wasn't actually production happening at all hours of the day and night. So I don't see any negatives. To me, it seems like a very positive bill that really, and a law that really ensures that businesses are more productive, more people get a chance to work. And then, of course, less people would have to do overtime work if they don't want to, right? You can have a night shift, as you mentioned, of people working in the evenings versus those working throughout the day. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this increases production and gets more people to work. Yeah. So, you know, and I was shocked to see that we had rodents eating into some of the non-perishables in the warehouse. And I found out later it's because there wasn't too many people in the warehouse in the evenings to be able to handle that. That's anecdotal, but just saying, I mean, you can imagine how many businesses where they run into these kinds of issues. Okay, that is all we have time for today. For those of you who've watched this long, I want to thank you guys for watching. Some of you who joined late, I know you were commenting on some of the earlier stories, so we couldn't get to some of your comments because we were kind of 20 minutes past some of those comments. So, you know, for those of you who were on time, you know, hopefully you guys got a chance to follow along with us. Those who are watching back later, you know, you can always go back to the beginning to watch and also comment, and we will respond to the comments afterwards in any case. I see somebody here saying that they're related to me. They have their dad is a Hatagwa. Yes, I'm sure. I find out every week there's a new Hatagwa. Oh. All the time, especially because of Facebook. Facebook is where I get all the connections from all these Hatagwas. But anyway, to stay on topic. So first of all, thank you guys for watching this far. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to both channels and follow Ivy on everything. Follow Authentic African on every platform. Ivy Prosper is her handle. It's right there on the screen. Mine is also on the screen. Authentic African in some way, shape, or form. You guys would know the logo by now. So subscribe. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up so the algorithms can see that you guys like this content. Share this with anybody you know who's planning to come to Ghana, who's interested in Ghana. We do the news about the continent, and in this case, specifically about Ghana, because so many people are interested in coming here. You should know what's happening in the country you plan to move, visit, potentially invest. So share this with those folks who weren't able to join, who may be interested in any of those things. And of course, if you haven't already, oh, I said that, like, comment, subscribe. When you hit that notification bell on the subscribe, hit all so you're notified every time a new video comes out. Any final words before we go, Ivy?
No, just thank you everybody for watching today. Don't forget to, as he said, like, share, subscribe, and support. You can support the channel. You can support my channel. I usually have links in my description. I'll pin it at the top of comments once we finish this, where you can support through PayPal, through Zelle, or through buying my book. And then with Joe's page, you can also support him. He has merchandise that is links to his video. You can get some of his authentic African merchandise, support his channel as well. That's all I have to say for today. That's it.
All right. Thanks, Ivy. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys all in 2 weeks on this particular This Week in Ghana. Bye, guys.
Bye.